The rent control trap, a complete rewrite. Picture this for a moment. You've just graduated from university, drowning in student debt, and you're staring at rental prices that would make your grandparents weep. In Manhattan, a cramped one-bedroom flat now costs over £4,200 monthly. That's double what a fresh graduate typically earns. In San Francisco, you'd need to work 23 hours daily, literally impossible just to afford basic housing on a median wage. Now here's where it gets absolutely mental. You've done everything society told you to do. University? Tick. Massive debt? Unfortunately, tick. Move to the big city for opportunities. Another painful tick. But now you rework in 2 jobs just to keep a roof over your head whilst your student loans eat whatever's left of your sanity. Then along comes a politician promising rent, controlled cheap, stable housing forever. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Like a proper lifeline when you're drowning. But what if I told you this lifeline is actually an anchor that'll drag you straight to the bottom? Let me paint the real picture here. Millennials and Gen Z are collectively buried under $1.7 trillion in debt. More than half of young renters spend over 30% of their income on housing alone, making saving for a deposit virtually impossible. Between 2020 and 2023, homelessness amongst 18 to 25-year-olds jumped by 25%. These aren't just numbers, they're real people sleeping rough because rent prices have gone absolutely barmy. Young people today pay 40% more in rent than their parents did at the same age, despite earning less in real terms. The homeownership rate for 25 to 34-year-olds has plummeted from 45% in 2005 to 39% in 2023. It is the lowest rate in modern history. And frankly, it's scandalous when you're in that position, desperate for any solution. Socialist politicians promising rent control starts sounding rather appealing. But here's the thing that's going to shock. Rent control doesn't actually lower rents. In fact, it does the complete opposite. And I'm gonna prove it to you in ways that'll make your blood boil. Today, we're dismantling this myth in 5 parts that'll change how you see housing forever. Don't you dare skip part 3, it'll make you want to throw something at the wall. But if you don't understand it, you'll remain trapped in this broken system forever. Right then, let's dive in. The dark truth about rent control in New York City. 60% of rent-controlled flats are in buildings over 75 years old. They're literally falling apart because rent controls make it financially impossible for landlords to maintain them properly. During the peak of New York's rent control crisis in the 1970s, the South Bronx was losing 30,000 housing units annually to abandonment and arson. That's an entire apartment building disappearing every single day. And the politicians want to bring this back. History has a wicked sense of humor. The South Bronx and parts of Harlem became economic wastelands because of rent controls. In the 70s and 80s, these policies made basic property maintenance financially ruinous for landlords. Entire neighborhoods turned into crime-ridden ghost towns. By 1980, the Bronx had lost over 300,000 residents. Think about that number. 300,000 people fled, leaving behind burned-out shells and economic devastation. This nightmare began in 1943 when New York implemented emergency rent controls during World War II. They were supposed to be temporary, preventing wartime profiteering. But you know what they say about temporary government measures? There's nothing quite so permanent. Despite the post-war boom creating massive demand for housing, those controls stayed put. Landlords had zero financial incentive to build new rental properties, so they simply didn't bother. Supply remained static, whilst demand exploded through the roof. Even if we give politicians the benefit of the doubt about their intentions, which might be rather generous, these controls didn't keep rents low. Instead, they created a housing shortage and a completely bonkers dual market system. Here's how it worked. Pre-war rent-controlled units became increasingly scarce and ridiculously underpriced compared to actual market conditions. Meanwhile, a parallel market emerged where new units that were UNT subject to controls commanded astronomical rents to compensate for the artificial scarcity. Government intervention was artificially choking supply, creating a massive imbalance. The severe shortage caused rents in new buildings to absolutely skyrocket. Did people connect the dots? Did they realize that housing was so limited and poorly maintained? Due to rent control, that folks were willing to pay fortunes for decent accommodation. Not a chance. The soaring prices just made everyone angrier, and instead of recognizing the actual cause, rent control itself, they voted for more government intervention. The very thing causing the problem became the proposed solution, making everything exponentially worse. The spiral accelerated when public pressure forced the city to introduce rent stabilization laws in 1969. This was designed as a gentler form of rent control for newer apartments, allowing minor increases while still keeping rents well below market rates. Landlords had to seek approval for any significant rent raises, which again strangled the income streams needed for basic maintenance. Like most emotionally driven government interventions, the rent stabilization law completely failed to address the root cause, the lack of financial incentive for investors to risk building new housing or maintaining existing properties. The additional complexity of having two types of rent control only confused the market further, discouraging development and perpetuating chronic shortages. The death spiral gained momentum. In 1971, Mayor John Lindsay's administration extended stringent rent control rules, severely limiting landlords' ability to increase rents, even when properties desperately needed major repairs. When maintenance costs regularly exceeded allowable rental income, landlords stopped making basic repairs to avoid bankruptcy. This only worsened the crisis. The city's response, in 1974, they established the Division of Housing and Community Renewal with even tougher enforcement mechanisms, because clearly, the beatings would continue until morale improved. Strict enforcement and harsh penalties further discouraged investment in regulated properties, causing property values to decline and abandonment rates to accelerate. By the mid-70s, property taxes and utility costs were soaring whilst rents remained capped. This created impossible financial pressure for landlords already in dire straits. High taxation, combined with rampant inflation, dramatically increased maintenance costs, driving even more landlords to abandon their buildings entirely. When you can't cover escalating costs due to frozen rents, abandonment becomes the only rational choice. By the late 70s, many landlords faced with impossible regulations and financial hardship resorted to intentional neglect or outright abandonment. Some properties were deliberately torched for insurance payouts, as insurance became more financially viable than dealing with regulated rental income. Arson rates surged dramatically. Up to 40% of fires in the Bronx were attributed to deliberate burning. 40%. Entire neighborhoods became characterized by burned-out buildings, abandonment, and urban decay that looked like something from a post-apocalyptic film. But when you've been priced out of the housing market and can see the game is rigged against you, you're naturally going to lose faith in capitalism. People don't understand the physics of money, supply and demand, or economic complexity. They fall back on what they do. Understand politicians making promises. So in 1977, another federal intervention was attempted. The Community Reinvestment Act. The CRA was designed to encourage banks to provide loans for property maintenance despite rent controls. Unfortunately, due to regulatory hurdles, limited market incentives, and financial constraints from rent stabilization, the CRA's impact was minimal and failed to reverse the decay. After decades of failed interventionist policies, New York fell into financial crises. The city was forced to make substantial cuts to municipal services, fire department, police, sanitation. The South Bronx and Harlem were particularly devastated, with property abandonment accelerating rapidly. The effects were catastrophic. Neighborhoods became economic ghost towns, creating conditions of complete desolation. By 1980, nearly half the housing units in the South Bronx had been abandoned or destroyed, directly because of regulatory decisions. Economic stagnation became entrenched, with unemployment exceeding 25%. This self-inflicted wound isn't unique to New York, it's a global pattern. Stockholm's rent control policies created an 11-year waiting list for basic apartments by 2022. Severe shortages forced young people and families into overcrowded housing, or to remain living with parents well into their 30s. Property owners stopped investing, leading to visible deterioration throughout the city. San Francisco's long-term rent controls led to a 15% spike in housing shortages between 2015 and 2023, dramatically reducing availability and driving up market rents for new tenants. Stanford researchers found that rent control caused landlords to withdraw from the market entirely or convert units to condos and short-term rentals. In 2020, Berlin imposed stringent rent controls, freezing rents at June 2019 levels. Within 12 months, New rental housing permits declined by nearly 40%, making housing even less accessible for new renters, the exact opposite of the intended outcome. Santa Monica implemented strict rent controls in the late 70s. By the early 90s, research showed these controls significantly reduced housing supply and increased rental costs for non-controlled units, pricing out young professionals and contributing to economic stagnation. Post-World War II rent control policies also battered the UK, resulting in severe underinvestment in housing maintenance. By the late 70s, significant portions of Britain's rental stock were classified as unfit for human habitation. When this pattern of government intervention creating the very problem it's trying to solve happens worldwide, we need to ask ourselves what on earth is going on. That which is predictable should be avoidable. How did we get here over the past century? More than 50 countries have attempted top-down command economies. With central planning, exactly 100% of them have failed to deliver long-term prosperity, and over 70% have delivered total collapse. From the Soviet Union and Mao's China to Cuba, Venezuela, Cambodia, and North Korea, it's disasters all the way down. But humans have a nature that makes history repeat itself endlessly. Due to evolution and biology, we act and react in predictable ways, from obsessing over short-term rewards to wanting to punish perceived enemies, believing we alone know what's best, and electing bullies to protect us regardless of the cost to others. Behavioral economists like Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler have repeatedly demonstrated through peer-reviewed research that humans consistently make terrible economic decisions when acting emotionally, under pressure, or driven by immediate short-term incentives. Exactly the circumstances when rent control gains popularity. Despite the eternal failures of command economies, humans simply cannot decide whether they want freedom with its consequences or a babysitter with the resulting tyranny. Economic historian Robert Higgs extensively documents the predictable outcomes of these failed top-down experiments, noting that centralized control consistently produces shortages, corruption, and stagnation rather than stability or prosperity. The Heritage Foundation's Index of Economic Freedom and the Fraser Institute's Economic Freedom of the World report consistently document strong correlations between economic freedom, market-based economies, and higher GDP growth, prosperity, and quality of life. Command economies consistently ranked among the poorest, most oppressive, and most unstable nations. Top-down planning breaks economies and makes stability impossible at any level except grinding poverty. Churchill captured this perfectly. The inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. The inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of miseries. Now, capitalism definitely has problems. As Thomas Sowell eloquently points out, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. In a free market, you get innovation and efficiency because entrepreneurs compete to win customers' business. This leads to innovation and rapid growth. But personal freedom and responsibility come at a cost. When you fail, it's on you. You can rise up, but you can also fall down. That's the trade-off many find intolerable during prosperous times. When the economy is booming, people lose sight of how difficult entrepreneurship actually is. They begin believing economies result from well-structured government, rather than realizing governments function best when they guarantee law and order, prevent monopolies, then get out of the way. Capitalism has been the single most effective tool for lifting people out of poverty humanity has ever seen. Even China, the former heavyweight champion of command economies and all their death and destruction, rarely said that to get rich is glorious. A quote from Deng Xiaoping before post-1978 economic reforms that opened China to free markets. Mao's command economy starved over 45 million people to death. Under Deng Xiaoping, collectivist farming was terminated, and farmers were finally allowed to sell surplus crops freely. Private ownership was introduced. International investment encouraged, and China began competing in open markets, ultimately becoming an economic powerhouse. Privatization, deregulation, and relaxation of restrictions incentivized entrepreneurs to innovate and invest. This sparked massive productivity increases with miraculous outcomes. Poverty in China fell dramatically from 88% of the population living below the international poverty line in 1981 under command economy to less than 1% by 2021 under free markets, roughly 800 million people out of poverty, the largest poverty reduction in human history. China's GDP growth averaged approximately 9.5% annually from 1978 to 2018, creating the world's second-largest economy and making China the primary driver of global poverty reduction for decades. Per capita income increased over 25-fold, from approximately £229 in 1992, over 12,000 by 2022. India followed a similar path, post to 1991 reforms, facing severe economic crises. Instead of trying to control everything, they relaxed regulations and implemented major liberalization policies. Poverty rates declined massively from roughly 47% in 1992, just 10% by 2019, lifting hundreds of millions out of severe poverty. India's GDP growth rate averaged 6% annually between 1991 and 2022, transforming India into the world's fifth-largest economy. The middle class expanded dramatically from approximately 50 million people in 1991 to over 350 million by 2020. GDP per capita increased over sevenfold from around £375 in 1992 approximately 2,600 by 2022. Whilst freedom can be frightening, as Milton Friedman said, a society that puts equality before freedom will get neither. A society that puts freedom before equality will get a high degree of both. Freedom does come with trade-offs. With open markets, you get inequality, there will be winners and losers. You'll also get the risk of instability. Markets can fluctuate, and when they do, voters and politicians will be tempted to call for bailouts, which only makes things worse. The question isn't whether there will be trade-offs, of course there will be. The question is which system has the better balance between benefits and costs. In a command economy, you get lots of promises, but few results. You're promised stability and security, but get predictable shortages. You're promised social equality, but get a corrupt group of elites running the country through force, whilst everyone else is equalized at zero. Despite big promises, command economy, reality is simple. Economic inefficiency and waste, corruption and cronyism, innovation, stagnation, reduced personal freedom, and economic distortions caused by central planners who inevitably misjudge supply and demand, causing shortages or surpluses, distorted incentives, and ultimately, systemic failures. Historical outcomes of command economies are remarkably consistent. Total collapse or severe long-term underperformance. The Soviet Union, Cuba's ongoing stagnation, Venezuela's economic collapse, Zimbabwe, Argentina, for the 100 years leading up to Malaise. Incredible. Turnaround history is absolutely dripping with examples. It's rather startling. We keep trying these ideas, despite their relentless failures. But that's what happens when populism kicks in. People get economically disenfranchised. Inequality grows uncontrollably. Resentment takes hold, and people vote emotionally for politicians promising free stuff. Politicians promise free transportation, free childcare, city-run grocery stores, and rent control, but you'll pay one way or another. So what would the alternative look like? Why on earth does government limit housing in San Francisco for every 8 jobs created in the last decade? Only one new home was built, forcing thousands into brutal commutes or homelessness. Yet local laws still make apartment construction illegal on over 75% of residential land. From 2010 to 2020, London's population grew by almost 1 million people, but the city only built enough housing for less than half that number, resulting in skyrocketing rents and prices. The numbers are absolutely mental. Due to ridiculous zoning regulations in Toronto, over 70% of residential land is zoned exclusively for single-family detached homes, severely limiting housing supply despite recent population surges. New York City would need to build 560,000 new housing units by 2030, just to meet existing demand. There's no sign they're planning anything remotely close to that. Zoning restrictions make building even modest, multi-unit houses illegal in most residential areas, whilst people scream for rent control. You wouldn't need to control rent if you just let the free market do what it does find, the right price, by allowing people to play the game of risk and reward. Let entrepreneurs build to fill demand. It really is that obvious. But if it's so obvious, why doesn't it happen? The answer will surprise you. It's because of the American dream. It might be dead, but it's still mucking people up. Housing is the one asset people understand intuitively. You can't live inside Bitcoin. You can't create memories with your children inside Tesla shares. You can't grow old with your partner in a pension fund. But you can do all that and more in a house. For that reason, most homeowners consider their house their biggest asset, and they don't want any plebs lowering property values with hideous apartments. In fairness, it's that and much more. Here are the top 6 reasons why expanding housing supply to meet demand is so difficult, even though outcomes are horrific. First, fewer houses means higher property values. Current homeowners want to ensure their property values rise. Local homeowners aggressively lobby officials to limit development, preventing any decrease in their property values. This is exactly what's happening in San Francisco, where homeowners actively oppose new apartment buildings, citing concerns over property value preservation whilst effectively keeping housing supply restricted. Second, NIMBYism not. In my backyard, local residents, especially in affluent neighborhoods, resist new developments, particularly multifamily or affordable housing, fearing increased congestion, infrastructure strain, neighborhood character changes, or socioeconomic diversity. Wealthy neighborhoods are politically influential, allowing residents to successfully block housing projects through zoning boards, community boards, and political donations. Manhattan-Est Upper West Side residents repeatedly blocked zoning changes that would allow increased density, despite New York's acute housing crisis. Third, regulatory capture and political influence favor established developers. Large developers strategically use absurdly difficult zoning regulations to reduce competition. Restrictive zoning makes building much harder, so builders who learn to navigate difficult regulations use them as moats to keep competitors out. This allows them to control supply and benefit from rising rents and values. Los Angeles has seen major developers consistently lobby against zoning changes that would create competition, resulting in sustained housing shortages. Fourth, local governments want high taxes per unit. They're incentivized to get maximum tax revenue per unit, meaning they want expensive units, luxury and commercial properties, not lower income housing generating less property tax per unit. More people equals more problems. Cities like Palo Alto and Cupertino favor office and commercial development whilst severely restricting residential housing, intensifying local housing crises. Fifth, infrastructure and public services concerns. Cities often cite concerns about strain on infrastructure, roads, public transport, and how more units mean increased spending. With increased spending, you need high property values for those delicious tax revenues. Restricting supply to single-family dwellings limits people, whilst maximizing tax revenue per unit. Sixth, environmental concerns, both real and manufactured. Established residents often claim environmental protections as reasons for restrictive zoning. While sometimes legitimate, these arguments frequently mask the fact that fewer houses mean higher property values. Marin County, California uses environmental zoning regulations to severely limit development and control population density, creating some of the country's highest property values. So everyone's in on it. Everywhere you look, everybody's trying to keep per unit costs high, supply tight, and the problem pervasive. Government wants high tax two-person race. Nobody wants poor people in their neighborhood. Homeowners want property values rising, and politicians want lobbying pounds flowing. What's a person to do? Is there nowhere that solved this problem? Actually, there is. Enter our heroes in Texas. Since 2010, Houston has built more new housing units than San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, and Washington, D.C. combined. As expected, this has kept Houston's average house price low, less than half of other cities. In 2023, Houston's median home price was approximately £200,000, compared to over $1 million in San Francisco and $700,000 in Los Angeles. This discrepancy is unaccidental, as directly attributable to Houston's uniquely minimal zoning and high housing supply levels. This is brilliant news for people trying to get on the property ladder, and terrible news for those already owning homes, wanting to see their biggest assets skyrocket in value. That's the conundrum. How do you balance the two? Actually, It's called the free market. Here's how it works. COVID hit, Austin housing prices harder than a freight train. Pre-COVID, the city was already growing rapidly, but COVID sent prices to the moon. Remote work shifts caused massive migration, particularly from high-cost areas like California, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Silicon Valley. As people fled draconian lockdowns and absurd tax rates for business-friendly environments, they found one. Overnight, Austin became a top relocation city for remote workers, significantly increasing housing demand. Sudden demand spikes rapidly outpaced available housing inventory. Homes received multiple offers above asking price, often within days of listing. From early 2020 to mid-2022, Austin's median home price surged nearly 50%, peaking around £500,000 in May 2020 to nearly doubling in just 3 years. Rents were also off the charts, increasing over 30% in 2 years, driven by increased demand and limited housing stock. But it didn't stay that way because free markets do their thing when left alone. Market correction was swift. Builders and developers responded aggressively to demand surges by rapidly expanding housing construction. Between 2021 and 2023, Austin ranked as one of the top U.S. metros for issuing residential building permits, dramatically increasing new home construction and normalizing supply. No need for top-down command economy control. Let entrepreneurs do what they do, best risk their own money competing in the marketplace to win your business. As this played out in Austin, the housing market stabilized and corrected from its peak. Median home prices declined, stabilizing at approximately £400,000 by late 2023. Rents also stabilized as supply caught up with demand, slowing dramatic price appreciation and returning to something more sustainable. The temptation to control all this is understandable. Nobody likes peaks and valleys, but in wildly complex systems, the best answer is almost always to stay out of the way and let the system heal itself. They have corrective mechanisms. Humans are incredible, but we're also notorious for doing too much. The disaster of China's command economy housing policies. China built somewhere between 65 and 80 million apartments, but now sit completely empty. That's absolutely insane. Enough empty units to comfortably house every single person in France. China has had many wins opening up to free market forces, but this is an unforced error of biblical proportions brought on by humans who trust their ability to get things just right way too much. The Chinese Communist Party killed millions through malevolence and a never-ending cavalcade of stupid top-down policies like forcing farmers across the entire country to plant identical crops regardless of local climate. Insert mass starvation here. The answer was Deng Xiaoping, who embraced free markets. The irony that even communist countries can only escape poverty by embracing free markets is lost on me. But it seems lost on China. Did they look around and say, hey, all the things going well in our country come from parts we've allowed to run free? No, they didn't. They looked around, saw successful entrepreneurs getting uppity, kidnapped them, I'm not joking, re-educated them, then gave them quotas to hit. That was the housing model. The CCP gave regional governments strict annual targets for GDP growth and urban construction, creating powerful incentives to build, even without actual market demand. The National New Type Urbanization Plan from 2014 to 2020 mandated construction of new urban areas, infrastructure, and millions of residential units. This caused ghost cities to spring up. Entire cities built, complete with apartment buildings, shopping centers, roads, public transport, everything despite zero demand. This is what happens when your foundational belief is that economies can be controlled. Economies can be influenced if you focus on creating the right environment. But the second you try to impose specific outcomes, you create cascading horrific problems. Take Ordos in Inner Mongolia. Built for 1 million residents but only reaching approximately 10% occupancy, leaving huge residential complexes and commercial areas empty. Ortianduken, the Paris of the East. A literal Paris replica built near home, intended for tens of thousands of residents. After nearly a decade sitting almost entirely empty, it's only now beginning to show signs of life. The consequences of massive overconstruction can't be overstated. Ordinary Chinese citizens invested heavily in real estate as their primary savings vehicle. Everyone believed largely because government encouraged them that prices would rise forever. This created speculative mania that inflated housing prices. Evergrande, one of China's largest real estate developers, aggressively pursued expansion through massive debt accumulation. By 2021, Evergrande held over £300 billion in liabilities, more debt than many entire nations hold. As should surprise absolutely nobody, given massive debt combined with lack of real demand. Starting in 2021, Evergrande began defaulting on bond payments, triggering massive financial panic with cascading defaults across China's entire property sector. The collapse sparked global investor panic, affecting markets worldwide. Given that property and related sectors account for approximately 25 to 30% of China's GDP, we've only just begun seeing the real impact of China's housing crisis. Brought on by command economy thinking. Following Evergrande's default, China's real estate sector saw numerous other developers facing severe financial stress and potential default. The hard truth is that whilst top-down control makes humans feel good, command economies are bound to fail for several reasons. First, centralized government planning is terrible at judging actual consumer demand, leading to chronic over or under severe resource misallocation and catastrophic financial consequences. Second, it creates lack of accountability and fosters corruption. When governments use taxpayer money to paper over bad decision-making, nobody's ever held accountable. In free markets, people go out of business for bad decisions. When government controls everything, taxpayers foot the bill. Third, there's no incentive for innovation. Whether we like it or not, people are motivated by incentives. When hard work leads to getting ahead, people will work hard and try to out-innovate competition. When that happens, we all win. When governments control everything top-down, they inevitably strip incentives from the system by making it impossible to respond intelligently to buying public signals. Fourth, poisonous resentment lurks in the desire for control. Many command economy policies are undriven by love of the poor driven by hatred of the wealthy. Look at senseless murders of successful Russian farmers that led to Ukrainian famine, or the exact same thing in Zimbabwe. Be very suspicious of anyone wanting to overregulate the economy. The odds there, the bad guy border on 100%. If they're not evil, they're guaranteeing bad results anyway. Top-down economic control consistently creates inefficiencies, corruption, systemic financial risk, and eventual economic collapse or severe stagnation. The IMF and major global banks like Goldman Sachs and JP Chase have warned that China's property market instability poses significant global economic risk, all because people think they know better than free markets or hate the uneven results. Free markets deliver, but the reality is that nothing, absolutely nothing, has pulled more people out of poverty than free markets. Given all that, what do we do now in an era where socialists actually wanting command economies are gaining traction inside major political parties worldwide? What's the play? The only real path forward. In 2024, Buenos Aires ended rent control, and within 1 year, available housing tripled. Rents plummeted by 50%, and the city experienced its largest construction boom in decades. If we've learned anything from history, it's that no government can effectively control economic complexity. Even attempts at something as simple as rent control have created shortages, skyrocketing rents, and exacerbated poverty and economic stagnation. We need to stop all interventionist policies. Economies have physics. They're complex ecosystems where changing one variable has knock-on consequences. There's no way to stop economic laws from playing out, even when we're offended by results. The only way to equalize everyone is to equalize them at zero, and the only way to do that is bringing the hammer of the state down to break their will. If you want to understand the horrors that approach brings, read Mao, The Unknown Story, The Gulag Archipelago, Tombstone, and The Red Famine. And books cataloging unimaginable cataclysmic misery resulting from handing unchecked control to the state and asking them to make everything fair. It's absolutely soul-wrenching and insane. Instead of going down that well-trodden path of suffering, let's examine examples where free markets were eventually allowed to correct command economy traumas. Consider Argentina, which after 100 years of lunacy that saw it go from one of Earth's most prosperous nations to an economic back, finally removed rent control laws in 2024 under President Javier Milei. The transformation occurred almost immediately. Availability exploded by 300%, rents dropped in half, and new construction soared to historic levels. Japan introduced nationwide zoning deregulation. Despite Tokyo's massive population growth and density, housing prices have remained notably stable, making it one of the world's most affordable major cities. Auckland, New Zealand, addressed their severe housing shortage by implementing sweeping zoning reform in 2016, allowing multi-unit dwellings throughout residential areas. The result? New housing supply skyrocketed, significantly moderating previously out-of-control rent increases, creating genuinely affordable housing options. In the US, beyond Houston and Austin, Raleigh, North Carolina implemented major zoning reforms, substantially reducing restrictions on housing density and construction in 2013. The result was increased affordable housing, rapid economic growth, and significant population expansion. Vienna, Austria embraced market incentives with robust public-private partnerships rather than rent control, creating one of Europe's most stable, affordable housing markets. By relying on free market principles and deregulation, Montreal has bucked the Canadian trend of absurdly high home prices, maintaining housing affordability compared to other major Canadian cities, like Toronto and Vancouver, which have some of Earth's most out-of-reach housing markets. Since 2018, Seoul, South Korea significantly relaxed zoning density policies, sparking rapid surges in new housing construction. The result has been supply finally meeting demand and resulting stabilization of housing prices. Despite strong population and economic growth, Berlin, Germany, provides a particularly striking example. After strict rent controls were ruled unconstitutional in 2021, Berlin returned to market-driven development, with immediate results increased housing availability, stabilized rents, and renewed confidence in housing markets. I could go on and on. But the bottom line is clear. There are proven, verifiable examples worldwide of how deregulation and opening housing markets directly leads to increased availability, affordability, and robust economic growth. Don't get me wrong, free markets aren't perfect. No, systemi. But some systems are clearly much better than others when the goal is a robust middle class, social mobility, and access to home ownership. The choice we face is UNT between socialist utopia, where everything is curated and perfect, versus the evils of capitalism. It is a choice between a messy system that actually works in reality and a system that sounds good but reliably leads to disaster. Free markets are flawed but effective at pulling people out of poverty and making home ownership affordable. Rent control and other top-down planning strategies interrupt delicate, complex economic ecosystems and replace them with shocking levels of corruption, supply shortages, and economic stagnation. We see it time and again. Worldwide policies like rent control appeal to deep populist resentments that occur when people are disenfranchised from positive economic futures by debt and housing markets, making home ownership impossible. Politicians promise quick fixes but instead destroy communities, shrink housing supply further, and turn thriving neighborhoods into economic ghost towns. It's very understandable why people are resentful right now, especially young people. But when we're angry, our thinking becomes punitive and short-term. We don't parse problems effectively and vote for things harming ourselves long-term. Rent control is a symptom of a deeper problem as you hollow out the middle class through terrible economic policies. You accelerate populism and usher in authoritarian rule. Ober history proves this always backfires. No matter how thirsty you are, drinking seawater only accelerates dehydration. That's exactly what rent control policies are. They sound like they'll fix problems, but make everything worse. The choice is ultimately ours. Demand a illogical temporary relief that feels good but accelerates decline, or address underlying causes of our problems. I wish there were easier answers, but at least there really is an answer, and it goes like this. Get the country out of debt. Get people out of debt. Stop issuing government-backed debt for university. Let people discharge student debt in bankruptcy court to force discipline on the industry. Make housing affordable through deregulation, so it's once again subject to market forces and incentives. Focused obsessively on eliminating policies that hollow out the middle class. Increase housing supply, decrease costs, and never vote for anyone thinking command economy will solve our problems. The exact opposite is true. Now, I don't know if we can save everyone, but I know we can save each other. Focus on yourself, your friends, your family. Let chain ripple out from there. Right then, If you found this deep dive into the rent control trap as eye-opening as I hoped it would be, do me a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps more people discover content like this. And if you're serious about understanding how economic policies affect your daily life, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss when we tear apart another piece of conventional wisdom that is keeping people trapped in broken systems. Share this with someone who thinks rent control is the answer. They need to see the real evidence before it's too late. The truth might be uncomfortable, but it's the only path to genuine solutions. Until next time, keep questioning everything, stay free, and remember the most dangerous phrase in any language is "we're from the government, and we're here to help." Your time is coming. Keep believing, keep fighting. Don't just watch. Go out and prove them wrong. Thank you for being part of the journey. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.